You know, I am here tonight more than anything else with a word of encouragement, with a word of hope, and with a word of optimism. What I want to talk to you about tonight is that we are facing extraordinary times. The answer to what we're facing is growth. Only the people can turn us around, and the fight is worth it. People are hurting all across this country. We are at the edge of a fiscal and economic cliff. If we keep going down this path, our kids and our grandkids will spend their whole lives not working to meet the challenges of the future, working to meet their priorities, but working to pay off the debts that their parents and grandparents racked up. Our parents didn't do that to us. Their parents didn't do that to them. And you know what? We're all here tonight because we're not willing to do that to the next generations. Growth is the answer. I'm going to suggest the challenges we're facing right now are very, very similar to the late 1970s. You remember double-digit unemployment, 22% interest rates, gas lines going around the block, stagflation? The answer we saw in 1980 was a grassroots revolution. It was the Reagan revolution. It was millions of Americans, many of the men and women in this room who stood up, who got involved and said, we're going to get back to the principles that made this nation great. President Ronald Reagan came into office in 1981, and he implemented policies the exact opposite of those President Obama implemented. The result was some of the most incredible economic growth this nation has ever seen. By the fourth year of Reagan's presidency, 1984, anyone know what the rate of GDP growth was? 7.2%. Well, if President Obama, coming into office, inheriting the same lousy economy that Ronald Reagan inherited, had implemented the same policies, and if those economic policies had produced the same economic growth by today, we would have an additional 7 million new jobs in this country. That is the equivalent of taking every single person who is unemployed in 46 of the 50 states and having a new job for each and every one of them. And growth is foundational to everything else. Every other challenge we have, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the national debt, whether it's maintaining the strongest military in the world, if we have growth, we can do all of it. And if we don't have growth, we can't achieve any of it. We need to be about economic growth all the time, every day. That's how we turn the country around. So how do we get it done? And that's my third point. Only the people can turn us around. I'm convinced we're facing a new paradigm in politics. It is a paradigm that is the rise of the grassroots. I got to tell you, it has official Washington absolutely terrified. But this new paradigm has been beta tested, unlike the Obamacare website. It was beta tested in 1980 with the Reagan Revolution, and we pulled this country back from the brink. And if you look at this past year, we have been seeing over and over and over again the power of the grassroots. One of the very first things I was proud to participate in the U.S. Senate this spring was standing side by side with my friend Senator Rand Paul in his epic filibuster against drones. Now, when that started, most of his colleagues in the U.S. Senate didn't understand what Rand was doing. They thought it was curious, quixotic, it didn't make any sense. And something incredible happened. We started to see people all over the country going online, going on Facebook, going on Twitter, speaking out and saying, defend our liberty, defend our constitutional rights. And as a result of y'all's leadership, as a result of the grassroots rising up, the next day, President Obama was forced to do what he had refused to do for 3 consecutive weeks, which is admit in writing the Constitution limits his authority to target U.S. citizens with drones. Following the tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, President Obama didn't come out as he should have, targeting violent criminals, But instead, he chose to target the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. Conventional wisdom in Washington was this was unstoppable. And once again, the same thing happened. Millions of Americans across this country began speaking up, began showing up at town halls when their senators came home, began lighting up the phone, began going on Facebook, going on Twitter, speaking out. But let me tell you something, even though Washington was convinced after Newtown nothing could stop the president's anti-gun agenda, when it came time for a vote, every single proposal of the president's that would have undermined the Second Amendment was voted down on the Senate floor. That was the power of the grassroots. A third time we saw concerned immigration, where the president, along with Senate Democrats, made a push to grant amnesty to those here illegally and not to secure the borders. The American people rose up in overwhelming numbers and said, no, we don't support granting amnesty without securing the borders and solving the problem. And as a result, that bill went to the House of Representatives and has stopped because of the grassroots, because of you speaking out to your elected representatives. And final example is the battle we just went through over Obamacare. If you read the New York Times, they will tell you that this battle accomplished nothing. Let me tell you, I think collectively we accomplished a great deal. One of the things we accomplished in the fight over Obamacare is that we elevated the national debate over what a disaster, what a train wreck, how much Obamacare is hurting millions of Americans all across this country. Secondly, what else did we do? We energized the grassroots. Over 2.1 million Americans signed the national petition at don'tfundit.com. The hashtag MakeDCListen has been tweeted over 1 million times in the last 30 days. Nothing matters more than an energized and active and vocal grassroots America. That's how you win elections. You know, just a few months ago, all of official Washington scoffed that the grassroots would rise up. Then we saw 2.1 million people signing the petition at don'tfundit.com. Official Washington scoffed that the House of Representatives would vote to fund the federal government and to defund Obamacare. And then the House of Representatives, exercising a profile in courage, stood strong and listened to the American people and led the fight. We didn't accomplish our ultimate policy goal in this battle, and we didn't because, unfortunately, a significant number of Senate Republicans chose not to unite and stand side by side with House Republicans. But listen, none of us thought taking on the Washington establishment was going to be easy. We all understood it was going to be an ongoing effort, and right now, I am more encouraged than ever. We saw the American people rise up, we saw the House of Representatives listen, and I am confident in time the U.S. Senate will listen as well to the American people. And so going forward, how do we keep fighting? I'll tell you what I'm spending my time trying to do is two things. Number one, tell the stories. Tell the stories of the people who are hurting. Because one of the things we can do in the Senate is help tell a story, help making it real how people are hurting. The second thing I'm trying to do is working to continue to energize and mobilize the grassroots to help all of us. The only way we win this is to win it together. We are working trying to build a grassroots army across this country because the way we're going to stop Obamacare, the way we're going to get back to economic growth, it's not going to come from Washington. It's not going to come from elected officials in Washington. It's going to come from the American people. And what I am trying to do more than anything else is help the American people be mobilized, energized, and carry that message to our friends and neighbors. That's how it worked in 1980. And that's how it'll work now. That leads to my fourth and final point. This fight is worth it. We need to unify. Growth and freedom are principles that bring together Main Street and the Tea Party. If we get back to our core principles, that's how you reassemble and keep strong Ronald Reagan's three-legged stool. If you look at the last 4 congressional elections, 06, 08, and 12, the Washington strategist said, Republicans, keep your head down. Don't rock the boat. Don't stand for much of anything. The economy's not going great for President Obama, so just keep your head down and we will win, as being the least bad alternative to whoever the other guys are. We got our clock cleaned in 06, 08, and 12. There's one election that was different, 2010. And it was different in the way we campaigned. 2010 was a positive, optimistic campaign. It was a grassroots campaign across this country saying we stand for growth and freedom. And we stand unambiguously against Obamacare because it is hurting millions of Americans. And what happened in 2010? Republicans won a tidal wave victory, taking control of the House, picking up seats in the Senate. And what do all the Washington strategists say in 2014? Let's go back to the model of 06, 08, and 12. You guys pushing for a stand on Obamacare, that's risky. No. Just keep your head down and we'll win races. That's not how you win races. The problem is, if you do that, you destroy every single reason anyone has to show up and vote. The model I turn to over and over again is the model of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan stood up with a smile and he drew a line in the sand. And he said, President Carter and I have fundamentally different visions of this country and our future. And if you believe in freedom, if you believe in standing on your own feet, if you believe that government is not the solution, government is the problem, then stand with me. And that's how we saw an epic transformation. Growth is fundamental to opportunity. Every single policy we think about, we talk about, should focus like a laser on opportunity, on easing the means of ascent up the economic ladder. Who has been hurt by the Obama economy? Who are the people who are hurt the worst? Who have been the losers under the Obama economy? They're the most vulnerable among us. They're young people, they're Hispanics, they're African Americans, they're single moms. Those are the ones losing their jobs. Those are the ones pushed into part-time work. Those are the ones losing their health care. These are real people feeling real pain because the Obama economic agenda does not work. And we need to make the case to every young person in the Hispanic community, in the African American community, to single parents struggling to provide for their kids, that the greatest engine of prosperity and opportunity the world has ever seen is the free market system of the United States of America. Freedom for me is not some abstract concept you read about in a book. It's real in our lives. My dad fled Cuba 55 years ago. As a teenager, he fought in the Cuban Revolution. He'd been thrown in prison and tortured by Batista's regime, beaten almost to death. Today, my dad's a pastor in Dallas. His front teeth are not his own because they were kicked out of his mouth in a Cuban jail when he was a teenager. When I was a kid, my dad used to say to me over and over again, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That's why every one of us is here tonight. That's why we are fighting. Because as Ronald Reagan famously observed, freedom is not passed down from one generation to the next in the bloodstream. Every generation has to stand up and defend freedom so that one day we don't find ourselves answering our children and our children's children. What was it like when America was free? That's a question that not a single man or woman in this room wants to answer. And that's why we are fighting, because together, I am convinced, together, standing together, we can get back to our free market principles, to our constitutional principles. We can restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.